Update now on breaking news we have been following much of the day as longtime Nashville Police Chief Steve Anderson cleans out his desk. It's over. Anderson was set to retire in the fall, likely October, but Mayor John Cooper announced his immediate departure this morning. Fox 17 News' A.J. Abel is live downtown with the backstory about this sudden move.
Yeah, Scott, well, last night Metro Police made their first arrest for somebody refusing to wear a mask. It happened right here on Broadway, and they arrested an elderly homeless black man, and that really outraged a lot of people. And then this morning, just like that, the police chief was gone.
Metro Police Chief Steve Anderson has been with the department for 45 years. 10 of them, he's been the chief. He's been praised for reducing crime in the city, but many people, including council members, they've long called for his resignation after reports of racial bias and critiques of department culture.
He should have been gone a long time ago so that Nashville can move toward its better self.
Davey Tucker Jr. is a pastor. He's on the Metro Human Relations Committee and also part of the Nashville Community Bail Fund. And right now, he's angry. So far, Metro Police has given out close to 20,000 verbal warnings to people who weren't wearing masks. When an East Nashville party with hundreds of maskless people packed into a house made national news, officers went to the house, but they didn't issue any citations there either. But on Wednesday night, they finally issued the first one. Officers cited and arrested Joseph Bryant, a 61-year-old homeless black man.
I believe that this is what white privilege looks like. Who gets harmed and who gets punished and who gets a pass.
Metro says he refused to put on a mask, even though he had 2 of them in his pocket, and a couple hours later, officers saw him again, also not wearing a mask. So they arrested him due to what they say is the obvious likelihood the offense would continue. Tucker believes policing in Nashville disproportionately affects poor people and people of color, and he says the city doesn't need reform, it needs systemic change.
So when you have some people who are devalued right off the rip because of their color or their social or economic status, that's the problem. And so that's what we have to talk about.
On Thursday afternoon, the district attorney's office retired Bryant's charges, though he did spend the night in jail.
And starting tomorrow, Deputy Chief John Drake will take over as the interim chief of police while the city does a nationwide search for a new leader.
Well, a lot of people have been wondering if this weekend was going to be any different when it comes to mask enforcement downtown. Behind us, you can see that there are quite a few people here on the sidewalks. We are seeing a lot of people wearing masks. There are still some that are not, so we don't have citation numbers quite yet. We know that 16 were handed out yesterday, but we are definitely seeing more police officers here on Broadway this weekend. Broadway looks a bit different today. More officers and even a command post are all in response to criticism that officers haven't been enforcing the mask mandate over the last few weekends. Steve and Sandy Fisk are comforted by the increased presence.
For me personally, I like that they're doing that because then I don't have to think about what anyone else is doing. You know, I can kind of enjoy it more knowing that everyone is going to have a mask on.
Amanda and Steve Pasha say they also don't mind the renewed push.
It's not that much to ask if it keeps somebody next to you safe.
Despite several weekends of tourists ignoring the mask mandate and only receiving warnings, Nashville's first arrest for a mask violation happened yesterday to a homeless man. New interim police chief John Drake responded to this today.
My concern is that was the only arrest that they had. And so from that point, even yesterday when I found out I was taking over the helm, I met with all the officers and said we can do better and we'll do better.
Today and tomorrow, Metro Police will have 30 officers downtown, 3 8-person teams patrolling on foot, and 6 on ATVs looking out for mask violations and also any transportainment vehicles that shouldn't be operating right now.
So we have people on speed dial from the law department that we can call if we have any concerns that arise. We have people from the fire marshal's office if we have a business that's not complying. We have contacts with the mayor's office to have them on speed dial as well. So totally different.
Hoping to set a better example of enforcement, all to keep Music City safe. These officers will be patrolling tonight until midnight and then tomorrow from 3:30 in the afternoon again until midnight. Also keep in mind that restaurants under current Metro orders can only be open until 10 o'clock.
Right now, extra patrols are on Broadway making sure you're wearing your mask. Those extra patrols started yesterday, and we know now that one person was arrested, cited for not wearing a mask. At the same time, new alcohol restrictions are in effect. I spoke to people today, residents and tourists, about the very different Broadway that exists right now.
Broadway is a very different place compared to before the pandemic.
fewer musicians, fewer people, but more masks, and the city wants the number of masks to grow. Police have issued thousands upon thousands of verbal warnings. They now have extra patrols downtown, issuing 20 citations just last night and arresting a man for not wearing a mask. Metro Nashville Interim Chief John Drake said earlier this week that this is an ongoing problem.
Tonight I had a couple officers call me and had some individuals they had warned and said, hey, put a mask on and we're going to have to issue you a citation. They said, do what you have to do. The president doesn't wear one. I don't have to either.
For tourists who know nothing about the mask mandate, giant signs aren't enough to get the message across. Police have 30 officers walking downtown and 6 on ATVs. But there's another sticking point.
We're trying to prohibit the use of alcohol on the streets. That's really been the issue with mask enforcement. It's people are carrying open containers, and as long as they have an open container, they don't have to adhere to the mask policy. So that's been changed.
In certain areas of downtown and midtown, it's illegal to sell drinks through store windows. Deliveries still allowed, but the new rules went into effect at 5 tonight. A tourist we spoke to sees the benefit.
I think that's a good idea because it stops people from lingering in the streets.
But some think it'll just create more problems.
What you're going to end up doing is forcing people to go home and have private parties at night in the house, grouping up. And then in your house, you don't wear masks. At least in a bar, you're forced to wear a mask.
I reached out to the mayor's office and the health department about that concern. I haven't heard back yet. But police say the goal isn't to ruin the fun, but to stop the virus.
With that kind of belief that they can do what they want, that this virus is continuing to spike, continuing to spread, I think enforcement is the only way to save lives.
I also reached out to several of the bars downtown selling to-go drinks before that 5 o'clock deadline today. Nobody wanted to do an interview. Yeah, here at Daddy's Dogs in the Nations, they've always accepted cash, and they say they'll continue to do that. But this bill in Congress could make that the standard just across the board. The smell of hot dogs and tater tots fills the air as folks stop on by Daddy's Dogs to pick up lunch. Some paying with a credit card, others with cash.
Cash has kind of always been king.
Sean Porter runs this place and says they went cashless for a while during the pandemic, but he's happy to take it now. Over at Tennessee Brew Works, they're leaning toward more contactless payment. Christian Spears is the president here, and his main concern is COVID-19.
We are trying to dissuade people from moving towards cash.
I asked one of the Tennessee representatives who supports the bill about that today.
Close proximity and the absence of a mask, those are more important vectors for spreading COVID-19 than the physical contact with items that maybe a patient has touched.
Plus, he says there are other ways to make sure things stay sanitized even if you do use cash. The main goal here is to make sure that people who don't have bank accounts and credit cards can still buy things, as well as a privacy issue.
We want people to be able to make purchases, legal purchases. We don't want Big Brother watching over us.
The bill was introduced in 2019, but Representative Rose says even with a pandemic happening, this is still something we need to talk about.
I think these issues transcend the current environment. They are more far-reaching.
Christian disagrees.
So right now, contactless has got to be the discussion, and conversations like this need to be held to another date, in my opinion.
Now, if this does pass, the first offense, a fine is $2,500. A second offense or more after that, $5,000. Reporting live in the Nations, Rachel Teedy, Fox 17 News, your Code Red Station.